What I do love about IAEM, about the conference, and I would say this even if I wasn't on the conference committee, is that it's not just the conference. It really is meant to be 3 core days of opportunity to learn and interact with colleagues and friends. And then there's other opportunities in the evening to do stuff. There's outings, there's tours, regional get togethers. There's all sorts of stuff. So it's more of an experience than just a conference. My thought is, especially looking at 2025, that the people who are influencing what happens are the people who are speaking up. It doesn't matter what level you're at or what your day job is, whether you're a full-time emergency management director or not. The people who speak up and make their voices heard are the ones that people are going to be looking to.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Christ-Led Podcast. I'm Kyle. I'll be your host. And in today's episode, we will talk about an important and I think increasingly urgent question, which is, are emergency managers being positioned to shape the future or really just react to our environment? And so we all know there's proposals floating around Washington with the idea of decentralizing or even replacing FEMA. And it's a moment of real reckoning for the profession. We're joined by Toni Hauser, co-vice chair of IAEM 2025 in the conference committee, to unpack what leadership, influence, and preparedness need to look like in this ever-shifting landscape. And so today we're going to talk a bit more about how emergency managers are moving into new spaces, from infrastructure and city planning to policy and risk finance, and why professional development is no longer just a career checkbox, but a path to real strategic influence, and I would even in some aspects say even strategic power. And along the way, we'll take a closer look at how the IAEM 2025 Annual Conference is helping leaders build capabilities to operate, shape long-term resilience decisions, and expand their influence far beyond just the normal sort of duties and ideas of working within an EOC. So first of all, Toni, welcome to the Christ-Led Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate the time to spend with you.
Before we start, how about just a quick introduction of who you are and where you're coming from, and we'll get started from there.
I'm one of the co-vice chairs of the IAEM Conference Committee. My day job is the emergency preparedness supervisor for the health department in the city of Minneapolis. And yeah, I'm great to be here with you.
All right, thanks for joining us. And we're going to talk about the IAEM conference today a little bit, the annual conference, which is the 73rd annual conference. It's going to be hosted in Louisville this year from November 14th to the 20th. And as we always say on the podcast, opinions are our own, not representative of any organization. We're just sharing information and ideas so that people can just have a broader understanding of some of the things that we're talking about. So one of the things, let's just sort of the elephant in the room discussion. Let's sort of kick off with that a little bit. So there's all this discussion. We've seen it internationally where I work. And then, obviously it's domestically in the United States. It's in the news almost every day. But there's this growing conversation in Washington, D.C. about sort of decentralizing FEMA and possibly even replacing it or re-envisioning what that might be in terms of FEMA. And so whether or not that happens, what do you think really holds national influence in emergency management today? And is that power where it really sort of needs to be? As we sort of look at previous models of being centralized, now we're talking about decentralization. And what are your thoughts on the impact there in terms of where we're going with all this?
Yeah, it has certainly not been boring this year. Speaking for myself and not for IAEM, I think it's important to implement some changes in emergency management at the federal level. I don't think anyone really disagrees about that. However, we can't just take everything that FEMA has done and pass that off to the locals or even to the states. That's not how emergency management is set up to work. It starts at the local level and then it goes up and then we get all the other stuff that we need. When it comes to influence, I think many people would say that the people who influence what's going on or emergency management would say like, oh, it's the state directors or it's FEMA leadership. My thought is, especially looking at 2025, that the people who are influencing what happens are the people who are speaking up. It doesn't matter what level you're at or what your day job is, whether you're a full-time emergency management director or not, the people who speak up and make their voices heard are the ones that people are going to be looking to.
No, I think that's a great point. You can either complain about things or you can try to be an agent of change, right? If you have a voice enough to complain, then you should have a voice enough to contribute to what reform looks like and have a voice in that overall process besides, and especially with this sort of like downward pressure of like things need to change. And so have a voice in the process of what does change look like. And in terms of influence at the conference itself, and I mean, there's so much at play in terms of national policy and politics and where things are going. We don't really know what that looks like, as you mentioned, but obviously there's this feeling of decentralization happening. In terms of the conference itself, as you're working on the conference committee, how does this sort of environment shape the way you're organizing the conference this year? And then maybe we'll just kick off like maybe it's a quick explanation, introduction to the conference this year. What are you looking at? And maybe how's this policy landscape shaping how you're organizing it?
The conference planning has been a little bit different this year. For the first time ever, we're holding the conference in Louisville, Kentucky. So this is our first year at this location. So anytime we're at a new location, there's a whole bunch of different stuff that we have to do around logistics and planning. We're in a really good facility in Louisville at the convention center. Everything is close by. So the logistics are really good. As we've been doing the speaker selection for breakout sessions, and that was done back in April, one of the things that we did was recognize that there will probably be a number of changes before November. So when people submitted their session proposal, maybe they had one job and by November maybe they'll have a different job, or maybe they can't make it to the conference. We've usually have a lot of flexibility around that type of thing. And this year it's just more flexibility than normal, which, I mean, if we can't be flexible, then we're in the wrong line of work.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that. Like they could propose something for the conference and then have a whole sort of presentation outlined. And then by the time you get to the conference itself, it's like the entire world has changed, right?
Yes.
So I think the presentation has changed and everything else. It makes it a little bit difficult to plan. I completely agree.
Yeah.
So the conference this year, you were telling me before, it's going to be in November in Louisville, November 14th to 20th. Let me know if I've got that right. And then are you still following the same sort of format before? So there's going to be the conference, but also the breakout sessions, vision talks, and poster showcase, and the pre and post conference training as well.
Yes, all the same, at least that's not changing. There's some normalness there. What I do love about IAEM, about the conference, and I would say this even if I wasn't on the conference committee, is that it's not just the conference. You don't wake up in the morning, go to the sessions, and then you're done for the day. You can be, but it really is meant to be 3 core days of opportunity to learn and interact with colleagues and friends. And then there's other opportunities in the evening to do stuff. There's outings, there's tours, regional get togethers, there's all sorts of stuff. So it's more of an experience than just a conference.
You said you've been on the conference committee for how long now?
I think 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so you've seen multiple conferences now. What is your favorite part of the conference itself or the experience, as you're saying?
There's a lot of things. I really enjoy getting feedback from people. Even, doesn't matter if it's positive, negative, or constructive. I love hearing about their experience and what they liked or didn't like. That's useful information because if there's something people don't like, we might be able to change it. We don't have control over everything. Like in Savannah, 2 years ago, we didn't have any control over the construction and the noise with that construction. Some things are under our control and others aren't. I love getting feedback. What is most meaningful to me is hearing from people who have attended the conference for the first time and had such a great experience that they felt the need to share that, let us know that, they felt welcomed and that was worth their time and money. That's really what I aim for, creating that type of experience for people who attend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot going on with the conference. It's a great place to come together once a year, touch base, talk to people, see how things are changing, seeing what they're dealing with. And I don't know the right term right now, but that sort of litmus test of where you are and where other states or organizations are, and meeting others and getting that perspective or calibration as you talk to your peers in the same field. When I think of a traditional conference, I think conferences, and as you mentioned, like you can go to the conference and go to the different presentations and be done for the day. But I think that you're organizing so much more than that these days. We talked about like the Envision talks, the poster showcase, the pre and post conference training, the regional meetings, the caucus meetings, and there's also award ceremonies, benefits, and the Emergency Management Expo itself. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about the expo?
Yes, I love the EMAX. The space that we have this year in Louisville is a little bit bigger than the space we had last year. So we can have more vendors and other booths there, which is great. I think that many people are afraid of the trade shows because, I mean, everyone's standing behind tables and you walk past and they're like, here, come talk to me. I want to sell you something. That might be a little bit of it, but a lot of the people who come to the EMX are our colleagues. They're people who do work in emergency management and also happen to work at the company that is there sharing information, resources, tools, products. So it can be really intimidating, especially if you really want that swag that they have, but you don't want to talk to them because you don't have any buying power. The thing that I did to get over that was I wanted the swag, felt bad about just going up and taking it and running away like ding dong ditch. So I started talking, I just introduced myself and I'm like, I can't buy any of your stuff. However, I want this thing. I wanted to thank you for being here and say hello. Once you open up that conversation, you can either just take the thing and go about your day or maybe learn other stuff. I'm from Minnesota. We tend to be connected to everybody else in the country. So it's possible we have friends of friends in common. I like going to the Emacs because it's a great way to learn about new things or discover new products and also to see who is here. They're industry friends as much as the National Weather Service or the state emergency management office.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think even with the expo plus the conference and the presentations and the training and everything else, it's a great place to sort of meet a bunch of people and see what they're doing. And everybody has to sort of go for the swag. I mean, that's why they bring it, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
and it's even if you're just carrying it around, you're doing them a service because there's a lot of advertising goes along with it. So, explain to me briefly, because I've seen some different conferences and things like that, but you're planning the one for IEM. So how many submissions did you get this year for the presentations? Did you find a good quality and quantity, I guess I would say? And then because, I mean, emergency management has been trending for good or for bad lately, right? In sort of the news and things like that. And then I'm also curious, did you pick up on any trends in terms of the presentations and what people are talking about?
I think we had somewhere around 350 or 360 submissions. I might need to double check that number, but that's for about 75 session slots that we fill. They do tend to be really great submissions. We provide some speaker guidance to people who are submitting to give them ideas or tell them what to do, what not to do. That's really important for them to look at that because we can tell if someone is just put something together at the last minute. Or sometimes people will submit multiple proposals that are maybe could have used some more thought when in fact it probably would have been better to just do one really good proposal. But yeah, we always have a difficult time winnowing them down to fit in the number of slots that we have.
Good place to be, right? I mean,
It is. Yes, it's a good problem. Some of the trends for this year, and so this could change before November, but it seems like at every conference now there's stuff in there about artificial intelligence and technology that's not going to change anytime soon, but also looking at incorporating data into planning and decision making. And I know this kind of ties in with the focus of this podcast is supporting and prioritizing community preparedness and resilience.
mhm. Oh, very interesting. Now, I was quickly looking at the program when you were explaining that, and there's a lot going on, especially in the pre-event and pre-conference training and post-conference training. And there's also a lot of presentations. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been an online program before. Is that going to happen again this year? And then if you're like me or if somebody is like me and you want to see everything, is there a way to see everything even though I can only be in one place at one time?
That's a great question. The first time we did the virtual conference was in 2021 after the 2020 in-person annual conference was canceled because of COVID. We got really great feedback and have now done that virtual conference every year in the spring. And I mean, we are planning to continue doing that. The biggest benefit is not everybody can travel to the annual conference. It costs money, it costs time away from work, it costs supervisor organization buy-in. With the virtual conference, it's one day, all the sessions are recorded, so you can watch everything, even though you can't be in all the places at the same time. That's a benefit of that. It also is a benefit for our speakers who maybe can't travel, or for some of them who are international. It's not just the travel, but maybe it makes more sense on their end to do something virtually.
With the training on that aspect, it's sort of be there or you miss it, right? That's the point, I guess, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the training is in person. You got to be there. Yeah, you got to pick what you want to see, and that's about it. That's your chance.
Yeah. You can only be in one place at one time. I'll let you know if that changes and we figure out some way to time travel so we can do all the things. And I think that's one of the benefits of having more stuff to do or more activities, because then you hear from other people about, maybe they went to a session that they are so excited about and keep talking about to people, and you can't go to that session because it already happened, but you see the presenter on the other side of the group you're a part of, and you can go talk to them and be like, hey, will you tell me about what you talked about? And can you come present to my department or program or whatever?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's the nice benefit of being there in person is that you actually can track people down, even if you have questions after
Yeah.
taking things like that. When you're looking at this, now you have a sort of a special insight into the conference because you're helping organize everything.
Yeah.
So you've got some good visibility. What are you particularly looking forward to this year? Have you been able to identify something that piqued your interest?
That is a difficult question.
There's just a lot, right? I think
Yeah.
looking at the program, and there's something like 174 different sort of events happening. Now that I just looked at the Excel sheet
Yeah.
on it quick. As you mentioned, there's like 75 different speakers. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff. I think one grouping of things that I'm really excited for, one of the benefits of being on the conference committee is also being able to be a speaker liaison for our breakout sessions. This is something that does not happen at every conference, and it is now something that I judge other conferences for not doing because it just makes so much sense. We get assigned to different speakers or sessions, and we communicate with them before the conference, help them review their presentations, make sure everything gets uploaded so it can get added to the conference app. at the conference, the speaker liaisons are the ones who introduce the session and the speaker. They moderate the Q&A at the end. And I love doing that because it really adds to the overall experience to have some of that structure in our breakout sessions. It makes it a better experience for the attendees and for the speakers to have some of that organization and someone to contact if there's issues.
I think that's super helpful, and especially if you are the same person they're coordinating with and you're also introducing them and you're on the stage with them, that helps quite a lot as well in terms of being familiar with people and having that sort of comfort level. What do you think? Because I mean, these topics are so wide ranging. You mentioned data and AI, and I'm seeing a lot in terms of all the different presentations. And it leads me to a question, and it's something I've been circling around in my head, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. The breadth of topics that the emergency management community has to deal with. In personal productivity, they have this issue called context switching, which is like, we're sort of constantly distracted by cell phones or social media or whatever, or we're continually switching tasks, or new email comes in and it takes you away from writing a paper or whatever the case is, that it's very difficult to keep track of everything. When I look at the program, I see all these different topics, and the first thought that was coming to my mind is the same thing in terms of context switching is especially for the emergency management community. It's such a breadth of topics you have to deal with. And not saying that every person has to deal with all of them, of course, but just in the community and the profession itself, it would be an interesting case study to see the breadth of issues you have to deal with, from communications, impact assessments, leadership issues, optimizing healthcare. It just goes on and on in terms of topics. What are your sort of thoughts when you think about the conference and like the variety of the presentations that are there, which is a very positive thing? But also, if you take a step back and you look at emergency management writ large, that's a lot of things to be talking about. What are your impressions from that? Or what are your first thoughts when we look at something like this?
I love this. First of all, because context switching is the bane of my existence. And I don't think people really understand just how much is included in emergency management. There's a lot. It is really distracting to be working on the thing and you get the other thing and you have to pay attention to that and you try and go back and you're like, where was I? One of the things that we do with the conference, if you look on the spreadsheet of all the conference events, there are some columns over on the right-hand side that have different topics. When people submit session proposals, they can choose topics that their proposal kind of fits under. And we do that because when we're looking at sessions to select, we don't want to have 12 sessions on leadership. We want to have a little bit of everything. So, because emergency management is so broad, we want to make sure that it doesn't matter if you're an emergency management director, work in public health, higher education, or public works. There is something relevant to your interests.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has to also be representing the profession, right? Because everybody's covering so many different things. You might be working in a small organization or small municipality or state and local tribal territories, but then you're working at a federal level or private sector or whatever the case is. So there's just a wide range of topics that could be discussed. And so it's got to be a real challenge to find a balance between them. But it sort of reinforces this idea. I was thinking about writing an article about context switching and emergency management, because they've actually, I mean, they've done studies on this where context switching makes you lose like 20 IQ points just because you're starting and stopping all the time. I just wonder sometimes, what is the impact on our community? Because that's all we do. We're going from grants to mitigation to response and coming back. Where was I with this grant program? Constantly going back and forth on different topics.
If that's true, I'm surprised I have any IQ points left.
Or any of us, for that matter. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of
Well,
the
we're
problem.
going to have
They
to.
just walked ourselves into a lower IQ.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly right. So this looks really interesting. I think everybody should absolutely make an attempt to attend the conference. Being there in person is obviously going to be a lot better as opposed to doing anything virtually. We do a lot of work virtually and stuff like that, but you just really don't have the feel if you can actually speaking of context switching, if you can actually spend time somewhere and then talk to some people and focus on that for the week. Definitely recommend that if you're coming from the community, this is a good touch point for the year to come in and check with people and see how things are going and listen to others and share their experiences. Anything that you'd like to add to that, Toni, before we close up for today?
I know that not everybody who wants to attend the conference has the budget or organizational support. There is an option to volunteer some of your time at the conference in order to cover part or all of your registration cost. That's one way to get the overall cost down. I have done that before when I've paid for the conference myself, and it is actually an interesting way, not like Minnesota interesting, which is very passive aggressive, to meet people, because you're out there directing people where to go and answering questions, and just by doing that, you're networking, also working off your registration. So yeah.
No, that's great. I think that's a great option for people that want to pursue that. That's obviously going to help both the conference and the individual who's attending as well. How can people find out more about the conference? I feel like most people will know already, but maybe there's somebody that is not familiar with the conference itself. So where can they find more information?
Yeah, at the IAEM website, iaem.org/USConf, CONF, or you could probably just Google IAEM conference. But there's all the information is there. If you're looking to convince your leadership why you should go, there's some documentation in there that you can use to show why it's important to go and what you might get out of it. If you have questions or need additional support, you can reach out to the conference chairs and vice chairs, and we'd be happy to help.
All right, sounds fantastic. So that's the International Association of Emergency Managers 73rd Annual Conference coming up November 14th to the 20th. Early bird discount deadline is Friday, October 10th, so you probably want to register before then and save some money. Deadline for registration is November 20th. This is a great event, a great opportunity to be there. If you need more information, go to the IAEM website. And thanks a lot, Toni. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing your insights on the conference, and I think everybody should look forward to attending.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Kyle. This has been really fantastic.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. And that's it for the Christ Lab podcast. If you have any questions or need any more information, feel free to reach out to us at contact@crisislab.io, and we'll see you next time.